This is Between the Links. And now, your host, Mike Heck.
The iconic voice of Esther Lynn welcomes you to a brand new edition of BTL. Happy Thursday to us all. Hope you're doing well out there in internet viewership land. We have a lot to talk about, ladies and gentlemen. We have the fallout of UFC 313. We had some big fights confirmed and announced yesterday, including a surprising re-signing and return of a longtime fighter who hasn't been with the company in quite some time. We'll react to that and discuss everything else going on in the combat sports world. But this week is going to be much like last week, where we turn the programming over to all of you guys. You ask the questions. We'll do our very best to provide answers. And joining me to do exactly that is Mr. No Gray Area himself, the climber of the MMA landscape and media space, the one and only Meshew. There he is. Hi, buddy.
Hey, man. How you living? Sorry, living.
Oh, he's back.
I didn't see my computer because there was just a gray blob on the screen. It appears we've solved that. Hopefully that's going to stay true. But knock on wood, kids.
I think we're going to have to knock on all the wood right now. But you know what? Before we get to the peeps, Jed, let's talk about what we confirmed and found out last night, along with an official UFC announcement. UFC is returning officially to Des Moines, Iowa for the first time in 2.5 decades. They're visiting the great state of Iowa. The main event is finally confirmed. I know it was reported ahead of time, but it was not done. Again, the golden rule, we're not going to report things unless they're done on both sides. Corey Sandhagen versus Davison Figueiredo. We also found out that the rumored bout between Bo Nickel and your favorite middleweight, Renier de Hitter, FKA Renier de Ritter, that is set on that card. And we also found out, and this threw people off guard, we found out a couple of weeks ago that Mason Jones, who had a short stint with the UFC, went back to Cage Warriors, found some success, that he re-signed with the company. It was a straight signing. He is fighting on this card, and he's fighting Jeremy freaking Stephens? Holy shit. I didn't see this one coming from a mile away, but Jeremy Stephens back in the Ultimate Fighting Championship, Jed Meshew. So we have these three fights. Your thoughts, your reaction, especially the Jeremy Stephens one.
The Jeremy Stephens one's real weird, right? Shout out to anybody who gets no point for that one. You get a full point. There's
You
not
win.
a human being alive who's like, you know what? Jeremy Stephens, BKFC Jeremy Stephens versus Cage Warriors Mason Jones. That's the fight that's coming up next. So that was just a super weird one, especially sort of given where Jeremy Stephens is in his career. How old is he? Is he 40? I'm going to look this up right now. 38, but as made the rounds on MMA Twitter when this was announced, won one fight in his last 10 inside the UFC at this point in MMA. And so just sort of a weird dude to bring back, despite the fact that generally well liked, obviously has the short BKFC run right there. The two fights, I think, that we happened in boxing and BKFC. However, they ended up running that. So, not awful to bring him back. Definitely a little weird. Just unclear on why exactly. Maybe you have a little more information on that. Main event's great. That's just no bones about it. It's a sick-ass main event. I know it had been rumored. Nice for it to be real. I would have really liked to see Davison Figueiredo take on Jose Aldo, but this is a fine consolation prize. Co-main event, I have my it's like the least good matchup I think that you could make with RDR right now, but it's fine. Bo Nickel's probably going to win, and I guess they can start advancing him up the middleweight rankings by having him beat a dude that most people that are UFC fans don't really know. But that's my only quibble. I just think the co-main event is a very weird one. Everything else, it is odd, but the main event's great. So sure, good on you, Des Moines. You get something that's pretty tasty.
Yeah, so Jeremy Stevens gets to fight in his birth city of Des Moines, Iowa. It has been a super weird MMA run for Jeremy Stevens. He had 3 straight wins: Gilbert Melendez, Doo Ho Choi, and the brutal finish of Josh Emmett in February of 2018. Following that, nice little stretch, stopped by Jose Aldo, loses to Zabit Magomed Sharapov, has the super weird no contest with Yair Rodriguez. Then he loses to Yair in Boston in October of 2019, gets brutally battered by Calvin Kattar. I mean, this was just, that elbow was so friggin' nasty. Mateusz Gamrot submits him, and then he's out. And he goes to the Professional Fighters League in 2022, loses to Clay Collard, wins a controversial splitty against Miles Price, gets subbed real quick by Natan Schultz. Then he has a draw with Jose Aldo in Gamebred Boxing 4, loses to Chris Avila at Jake Paul versus Nate Diaz after Chris Avila missed weight. And then he goes over to BKFC, stops Jimmy Rivera, beats Bobby Taylor, stops Eddie Alvarez. It was on a nice little run. Seemed like BKFC, who they have Mike Perry, they have, when they put big events on, they seem to do very well. And Jeremy Stevens was sort of becoming, like, it was like his comeback. It was his emergence back into the combat space where he was winning fights. He was doing it impressively. He was fun as hell to watch. He was getting some traction. And then he goes back to the UFC. I honestly am stunned by this. And I have no insight to this. I don't expect the UFC is paying him like 6 figures to show here. So do you feel like this is just a gamble on himself? Like he just didn't think this opportunity would come, and the UFC was like, hey, we're going to Des Moines. Jeremy Stevens got a little bit of buzz going on. Let's try to get him back against Mason Jones.
I mean, first, let me apologize for everything that's going in on my side. I don't know what to tell you. My internet is saying that it's good. It's saying I've got 250 and 250 right now. That does not appear to be the case based on
You look sharp
everything
right
that's
now.
happening, but I don't know. My internet's saying it's good. So again, knock on wood, hope this gets better, but I'm sorry, comment section. 2, I think the most logical explanation, the thing that makes the most sense to me, is that they are going to Des Moines. Like that is where Jeremy Stevens is from. And that this is a, hey, why don't you retire? Like, right? Like, why don't you retire from MMA? You know, you can still go do the BKFC thing. They obviously have a very good relationship with BKFC in general. And Jeremy Stevens appears to really sort of be well suited to that. But let's do like a real retirement thing. And you will come and you will have your flowers and you'll get to gin up a little bit of support amongst the crowd because it's our first time in Des Moines in forever and there just aren't that many fighters from the region. You can come. We can give you like a full-throated send-off as you move on to the final stage of your career, knocking dudes out in bare knuckles. So that would be my guess, right? Like, I don't know if that's actually how it's going to end up shaking out, but if I'm Jeremy Stevens, it feels like absolutely the way to go out. I mean, we've heard Dustin Poirier talk about how important it is to retire this year when the UFC goes back to New Orleans. Like, I want to bring the UFC back to Louisiana, back to New Orleans, and that's going to be my retirement fight. I don't see why Jeremy Stevens would feel any different as far as his MMA career, and particularly he can still do other things, boxing, bare knuckle, etc. So I think this just sort of makes sense for all parties involved if that's what it is. If this is actually Jeremy's just back and in the fold, weird as hell, and I don't get it whatsoever. But if this is a one-time thing because, you know, both hands wash the other, yeah, makes sense. Seems like a good idea.
Yeah, I didn't really think about it like that. Let's just go in there and have one last MMA fight and then call it an MMA career and then go back to BKFC or go elsewhere. Go to what's BKB? I think they renamed that or the Dada 5000 company bare knuckle organization that is going to be on Vice TV. So they get a little TV deal coming up soon, which is pretty damn cool. So I mean, there's definitely going to be some interest in him, especially in the bare knuckle boxing world. But let's just say right now, let's say Jeremy Stevens, Mason Jones, the betting odds come out right now. and it's a coin flip. It's like minus 105 on each side. Who wins? Like, who are you putting your money on?
I mean, probably Mason Jones because he has
Yeah.
won meaningful fights in the past decade. Like, I mean, Jeremy Stevens has the success in BKFC or whatever, but like I said, he's 1-9 in his past 10 in the octagon. The win is, or I'm not in the octagon, counting PFL. The win is a splitty over Miles Price, right? Like, not exactly something to really stand up and take notice of. His last like meaningful good win is Josh Emmett in 2018. 2018, that's 7 years ago. Like that's not recent whatsoever. And so even though Mason Jones has, been doing the Cage Warriors thing, and that's certainly not the same level as staying competing in the UFC all that time, like better wins. His losses are, also two really good dudes in Ludovic Klein, Mike Davis. I'm just going to assume that as the younger man who has tread left on the tires, he will succeed. But maybe the Des Moines crowd gets Jeremy Stevens up. Little Heathen goes out there, throws bombs, and gets it done. It's hard against a guy who's never been knocked out, but Jeremy Stevens hits are hard. So live, he's not. It's not that he can't win this fight, which probably makes it a good matchup, right? Like this is a winnable fight for him to end his career on. Again, assuming that's what we're doing here, and if we're not doing that, I do not know why we're not doing that. It's the most obvious choice for all parties.
I agree, and you may be right about this, so we shall see. But if you're Mason Jones, yeah, you want to be back in the UFC, but just tackle the man, tackle this dude to the ground, just
Coward.
Take out all error, and you probably win this fight. You probably finish Jeremy Stevens, but we'll see. Maybe Jeremy Stevens has a big moment. Who knows? Maybe 2026 predictions. We're talking Jeremy Stevens fighting for the lightweight title. Who the hell knows? In this day and age and with this wacky time in our sport and in the UFC. But that is UFC Des Moines. Let's go to the peeps. Following this news, UFC 313, etc. And there he is,
Mike,
no sleeves. Casey is ready to friggin' go.
Mike, right. Do you know the last time the UFC was in Iowa?
25 years ago.
2020. They've never been to Des Moines. Do you know the number of the event? I'm not even going to ask you if you know who fought. Just do you know the number of the event?
76?
Fight night 66.
Guys, it was 2000. There weren't fight nights in 2000. It was UFC 26.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
It was actually a pay-per-view.
You guys said it
I knew there was a 6.
25 years ago, 70 was like in the 07 or something. Or 6. There's 26. It was main evented by Cedar Rapids. Kevin Randleman won a unanimous decision over Pedro Hizzo to defend the heavyweight title. And also Pat Miletich defended his welterweight championship, though at the time I believe it was called bantamweight or maybe lightweight. I think it was called lightweight at the time, actually, against John Alessio with an armbar. Matt Hughes fought on the same card because this was in Iowa, so you just had all the Miletich dudes. You had Jens Pulver, Matt Hughes, Miletich running amok.
That's so weird. Hey, remember how, sometimes we get the questions on the shows like, what would you nickname this card? Do you want to know the nickname of UFC 26?
I mean, I'm looking at it, so I can't answer this, but it's a great one.
Like artillery or something.
Terrific. No, it's so much better.
Oh,
live from Cedar Rapids, Iowa. By the way, no Joe Rogan on the broadcast. It was Mike Goldberg and Jeff Blatnick. UFC 26 Ultimate. UFC 26 Ultimate Field of Dreams. It's so awesome. That is so friggin' funny and awesome and cool.
Here's the best part of all of this. I've definitely seen this because I went back and watched all the early UFC events. I obviously was not following this live at the time, but I don't have any recollection of this. But Wikipedia tells me that in just a terrific bout between Amari Battetti and Alex Andrade, do you know? I mean, Mike, you're probably looking at this. Casey, you will never guess how this bout ended. It's by disqualification. Would you like to know why?
Disqualification.
Kicking with shoes. This was back when you were allowed to wear shoes, but you couldn't kick with them. So if you were a wrestler, you could wear your wrestling shoes, but you could not use them to combat people with. God, the early UFC was a wild time.
Look at that fight poster. This is unreal.
Kicking shoes is the best DQ win of all time.
That's so awesome. I'm sending you the poster right now, Casey, for UFC 26 Ultimate Field of Dreams.
I wish we could have like a modern post press conference of Dana, but on the results of this card. Like, Dana, there was a DQ. What do you feel about this situation? I just
I just love that like early UFC it was functionally a big regional promotion, right? Like this was 26 was their second trip to Cedar Rapids because their first one was like a year and a half earlier because all the Militich dudes are from Iowa. And it was just like, we'll just go there because the guys we have who are champions and fighting, they're here and they can gin up a population to contribute.
Shoney Carter, Ian Freeman fighting in Iowa is certainly something. Jens Pulver, Matt Hughes. I mean, just Militich, all the stars, all the names.
How much were the pay-per-views back then? And this is back then. You had to pick up a telephone and call your pay-per-view operator or whatever.
Probably like $40.
40, that much?
Probably. My recollection is that pay-per-views were expensive for anything.
Even back then?
But like, I don't know, maybe it wasn't.
It was like
$25 because
it was like maybe it was like
$40 would be like $300 or today's money. So, but yeah, this was awesome. I'm super happy that we're going back to Iowa for literally the first time in 20 years. It's just the absolute best to be like, hey, we're going to go in back-to-back years. Not even back-to-back years. Within 11 months, they went to Iowa twice. And we're just like, nah, we're good. Never coming back here.
The wild part, though, I'm looking at the poster for the event. It's actually kind of more original than most UFC posters right now. It's actually something more unique to it. Like this one actually.
It's the same core concept. They just don't have Photoshop to like.
Well, no, but even the way
they have to like physically.
They're laying the text out. The text is like laid out differently. It's got live. It's just kind of, and it's on a Friday. It was on a Friday. Too.
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
It was a Friday card.
Huh. Look at that.
SEG, the old UFC
I mean, this
logo.
is pre-Zuffa. It's the best.
Yes.
Oh, UFC 26 was the fourth straight UFC event to have never received a home video or DVD release in the U.S.
Wow. So
this card was so trash they didn't even put the thing out in Blockbuster for you to go to.
UFC 26 watch party? I think we got to do it.
Oh, man. In 21, the first trip to Iowa marked significant rule changes due to the Council of the Mixed Martial Arts Commission. Prelim bouts were now 2 5-minute rounds. Main card bouts were 3 5-minute rounds. And that's when championship bouts became 5 5s. UFC 21 was the first UFC event to adopt the 10-point must system. Man,
really?
History in Iowa.
That's why they're going back. Okay.
25 years, time to make a trip. We haven't been to Chicago in a decade, but you could go to Iowa this year. What the hell is the UFC doing?
Got that Iowa tourism money. Iowa tourism money.
Yeah, maybe. They must be.
I mean, I guess, but like 2019 was the last time they went to Chicago, which is the third biggest market in the country, and there are 2 current champions with ties to it. It's insane.
They
Kansas
skipped
City
over
gets
Tachi
2 cards in 3 years.
Yeah,
no Tachi. No Tachi.
They skipped
what
over
the hell?
Tachi.
Oh my god.
Also true. Tachi just catching in the teeth.
Yep.
I need to make Jose ask Dana every time about Tachi. That's all he has to do.
Remember so 5 years ago when you said
any
Tachi
card in Tachi?
Anything.
You just do an Apex card, not in the Apex. Just do it at Tachi.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do the Josh Emmett, Lerone Murphy card at Tachi. That's so much cooler.
You You owe them.
No. If you're going to Tachi, I want you to try, and I want it to be a callback to WEC functionally and all the lighter weight classes. You don't put a freaking middleweight contest in Tachi. 145 and below are the only weights we're putting on the Tachi card.
Who are the
Jose
only?
Aldo should be on that card.
Is that so? Aldo, Cubby. Who else is left in WEC?
I don't think
Dom
anybody.
just retired.
Because Dom retired.
Hani
Nobody
Yaya. I
gets
don't think
jumping out.
Hani Yaya is in the UFC
Hani
anymore.
is not in the UFC anymore. I mean, that's got to be it. It's just nobody else that is remotely in the neighborhood of that. So
yeah, I can't
do it now before it's too late.
Yeah,
for sure.
And that's
technically
a good
Donald
fight.
Cerrone. Technically, Donald Cerrone is coming back.
Right. Well, yeah, maybe if
I'll
Donald comes
believe
back,
that when I see
I'll
it.
believe it. Yeah.
That like happened.
Let's talk about
and
the
then
GFL.
nothing has happened since then. Like, yeah,
He's
Donald's unretiring, and then nothing has come. What does being in the pool even mean?
He's got to pass all the drug tests.
No, he doesn't. The UFC is in charge of their own drug testing. They just be like, "You're fine, do it. It's cool, whatever."
Yeah, but he's not Brock. It's not Brock Lesnar they're trying to sneak in there. It's just Donald Cerrone, and Dana didn't even want to fight.
They're trying to sneak in anyone. Who gives a like? Who truly gives a? There's nothing. They got rid of an independent testing situation to bring in a homemade one. It's a joke. Who cares? And this is not me criticizing. That's how it should be handled. But like, come on.
I was at the gym the other day, and Victor Henry and Taco were training, and the UFC drug testing guy was there, and he sat there for 2 hours waiting for practice in.
Man,
so,
God, I love this job. I love this job so much. I wouldn't trade this job for anything in the world. If I could pick another job other than this, it would be being a drug test officer for a fictional company. Like, that is the most fake ass job in the world. Like, yeah, I'll just sit here and wait. Like, you are contributing stone nothing and getting paid, I assume, a decent salary for it. Like, what an incredible grift of like, yeah, I'm keeping the sport safe. No, you're not. Nobody cares. This is nonsense.
All he's doing is just taking the cup back to the lab for the scientists to examine it. Scientists.
Dude, I promise you, the scientists spend 8 of the 10 hours of their workday just like playing Candy Crush and doing nothing because their job is fake, because it's a nonsense thing that they have grifted millions of dollars out of this company for. I got an immense amount of respect for the people who have done this, because I hope one day to be crafty enough to get paid for a nonsense job, what I'm assuming they are making.
Hey, maybe you can work for GFL.
Oh.
That's not a real company, so no. I want
fictional.
The check's got to clear for me to work
fictional.
somewhere.
Fair enough. All right, what are the peeps talking about? I'm sure we're going down memory lane and recounting my favorite moments from UFC 26 right now.
All right. From super
Our
chat from
moments.
Slito.
BSD 0-2 in his last 2 moves up 2 spots in the UFC lightweight rankings.
Tell me that's actually a thing that happened. That's incredible if it is. He sure did. I guess Jalin Turner dropped out with retirement. Out. Why did he move up a second one, though? Was Bobby Green ranked? Was Bobby Green still ranked?
He must have been.
But that still doesn't make sense because there's only one.
Okay, no, it does. It does, because BSD was 15. 2 guys left. The bottom 2 guys are out, and they bumped 2 guys up.
No, but why is there only one new addition to the rankings if 2 guys are out? The only not ranked previously says Ignacio Bahamondes.
I don't think Dawson was ranked.
Why didn't he have the not ranked tag next to him?
I don't know.
Unless that's just
I don't think Dawson was ranked.
A mistake. Could be. Assuming that this is correct, which I'm assuming you are, then yeah, it makes sense, right? Like just 2 dudes ahead of him dropped lower, and that's how that will go. But BSD should probably win a fight soon. That would be helpful for him.
Yeah.
Sure.
We don't follow the UFC rankings anyways. We're the only rankings that matter.
Thank you. All right, thank you, Slito. Super chat
For the
from
record, the UFC rankings do have Magomed Ankalaev above Alex Pereira in their pound for pound rankings. Just throwing it out there.
wow.
Throwing it out there. I don't know if has the rankings show dropped? Did it drop today? When's it
Dropping
dropping?
tomorrow.
Oh,
Tomorrow.
well, tune in for that conversation on the rankings show
Teaser.
tomorrow.
Yes.
I,
Unless you want to super chat in, we can spill the tea.
DJ Swinity, now you are correct. This is a ranking show discussion.
yeah. You got to pay if you want to hear my rankings. All right. I'm not gonna.
Oh my gosh, it's the
All
best.
right, RJ. Oops.
Thanks, Lito, by the way.
RJ, it's not a robbery, but the MMA equivalent of Seinfeld's. Not that there's anything wrong with that. Oh, that's wicked
That's
funny.
pretty good.
Oh, that's
pretty
a good.
good.
One. Not a robbery.
It's not a robbery, but the MMA equivalent of Seinfeld's. Not that there's anything wrong with that. That's pretty freaking good, man.
Something like that.
I don't think that this is true, but it's definitely funny. Right? Like, I don't think that these are speaking to the same thing, but that's us quibbling about like things that don't matter. This is just a funny joke, and I credit you for that, RJ.
Maybe more accurate for the Seinfeld quote. I think the one we used a lot was, "It wasn't a bad fight, but I'm not gonna go rewatch it." I feel like we say that a lot.
That's much more correct as a 1-to-1 port over.
Yeah.
But this is much funnier.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was certainly a fight that happened.
That happened.
Yeah. I think Casey nailed it. I think the actual correct one is like, not a great fight, not terrible, or like, honestly, maybe the actual usage is for, again, hat tip to the upcoming rankings pod. Murad Dvalishvili is really good. Boring as shit, but really good. There's nothing wrong with being really good. Just don't care to watch him at all.
Winning. No, okay.
Tune in to the rankings pod.
Tune in to
We hit on all these things.
Winning is the most important thing. Not that there's anything wrong with that.
Not there's anything wrong with getting 2 checks,
Mm-hmm. But well done, RJ. I respect this a lot.
Terrence Leverett. Oh, he has his theory on why they signed Jeremy Stevens. We were so off.
Darren Stevens wins and he gets Connor. UFC over BKFC.
I actually think that would be a good fight. I think there's a 0% chance that happens. Like, why would Connor?
He's got to win, man.
So why would Connor take that fight?
Because he probably
isn't that the one winnable fight for Connor?
I don't know. Like, Michael Chandler is winnable. Michael Chandler sucks, so like you could beat Michael Chandler.
This version of Connor, come on.
I don't think Jeremy Stevens is any more winnable than any of the other ones. Like, if you want Connor to have a winnable fight,
Chris Avila beat Jeremy Stevens.
This is very not the same thing we're operating on. Also, Connor is super wild. If you want Connor to have a winnable fight, you need to have him fight somebody who can't take a punch whatsoever. Like, that's it, because Connor is still going to be dangerous in the first 5 minutes of a fight. So you just got to find a dude who just get jawed and fall over. Or don't care whether Connor wins or not, because Connor's delusional and thinks he'll win every fight. But what's the benefit to him, unless he is actively being like, I'm now not good at fighting, but I can win this one, which requires a level of introspection that Conor McGregor does not possess. The's no.
He fought Donald Cerrone. That's just a small step above Jeremy Stevens, I think, at this point in their careers.
Yeah, but you could squint your eyes and pretend Donald Cerrone was still good, or at least relevant, right? Jeremy Stevens has won one fight in 7 years.
You just don't mention that part. You just show the highlights. You just show the RDA knockout.
Legitimately, if you're Connor and or Stevens, I think you'd rather do this in BKFC than UFC anyway. So.
Oh, cool, yeah. Well, that's the UFC's. They're squashing competition. They're getting there.
Maybe
it
happens. Maybe it's maybe it's a TKO boxing main event if Stevens wins.
I just don't think any of this is going to happen.
What kind of-
I
It will be
honestly, I
fine.
wouldn't rule anything. I wouldn't rule anything out at
Yeah,
this
I'm
point.
going to rule this one out, and I'll eat the crow
Well,
if I'm wrong. If I'm wrong,
Hey,
remember this, parents. And when
we're
I'm
talking
wrong,
about
let
Jeremy
me have it.
Stevens today in the UFC,
Look.
so I think anything's out there, to be honest.
I mean, I mean, we can't really. He has to beat Mason Jones, and he has to like kill him, and then he has to get on the mic and cut a terrific promo and look like an absolute superstar. You put him in Des Moines with his fans. He knocks out Mason Jones, first guy to ever do it. Gets on the mic and cuts something good. Maybe wouldn't rule it out.
I'm ruling it out.
I'm
I'm
probably
doing the
forgetting
exact
somebody.
opposite of an ought no. This is an on to any other one. We're not doing this.
The more
It's
you
an
fight it,
ought
the more I'm going to argue
no.
for it. Ooh.
You can.
It's an onto. You're doing an onto. The
Technically,
reverse. The absolute opposite.
Technically, I'll never be right until both men are no longer with us. But I'm confident in saying this won't happen, and we can just circle back, and y'all can rub my nose in it if this fight gets booked.
What a moment. We're doing a reaction pod and everything.
Yeah,
Clip it right here. You can 100, and I will raise it and be like, it'll be the Happy Gilmore speech. I'm smart or I'm dumb. You're smart. I was wrong. You were right. I'm ugly. You're attractive. Like I'll just do all that for 10 minutes, but it ain't happening.
What's it? I know you guys mentioned it before, but like, did the UFC outbid BKFC? Is UFC going to pay Jeremy Stevens more? Because I don't recall any fighter going to BKFC and taking less money. So
No effing chance. There's no chance.
So Stevens is actually taking a pay cut just because maybe he just wants that whatever.
I don't know.
I guess.
Did he sign a new contract? Was he still under? No, I guess because he went to the PFL, so he must have signed he must not have had a UFC contract if he went to the PFL.
Yeah, so
I bet he's making what he made when he left. Like he might be making like 100. Who knows?
I will bet he was taking a marginal pay cut because, again, he wants to end his career in Des Moines. And that's not his fighting career. He'll still do others, but he can end his MMA career by taking a pay cut. I bet Mike's right. I bet he's just making what he made on his last contract. But I'm sure that is a pay cut from what BKFC will pay him or whatever, but not massive pay cut. And he can make it and come and get to say goodbye to the UFC in a way that feels completed.
What's his loss streak right now in the UFC?
In the UFC?
Several.
Hold on. It's a lot, but she lost like
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. He's winless in 6 fights.
But does have
losses.
a win over Josh Emmett. So there you go.
Which was, he got 3 performance bonuses in a row before the Jose Aldo fight. Gilbert Melendez fight of the night. Performance bonus knocking out Duho Choi. Performance bonus knocking out Josh Emmett. That was a brutal knockout. The Josh Emmett one.
Oh, it almost ended his career. Yeah, it broke his face in half. Yeah,
because the referee decided we're just gonna let.
Was that the one he came down the big forearm right across the face? Yeah, on the ground. That was
Eek. Look, Jeremy Stevens got a lot of shit for it, and I get it because I thought that he didn't deserve the shit for it, and I always thought that people way overblew Conor McGregor's "who the fuck is that guy" line. He was not telling lies when he was like, I hit harder than this dude. Conor knocks people out. Conor TKOs people. I kill them is like paraphrasing that. Like that is true. And people just really wanted to gravitate towards Conor. And so I did not think that was great trash talking, especially because I actually think Jeremy Stevens was 100% accurate in this assessment.
The timing was really exceptional by Conor. The timing was good.
I mean, the timing is good, but like the joke isn't even good joke. Like people just want to do it because of who Conor was at the time.
But remember,
like,
Jeremy Stevens was interrupting. He jumped into the conversation.
Yeah,
it got overused. That little meme got overused.
Way definitely. Overplayed. But like I get it.
But it was.
But also, Jeremy Stevens was in fact true. Like Conor McGregor TKOs people when he knocks them out, they die. They don't move.
By the way,
so yeah, Josh Emmett, tough scenes. But then Josh Emmett did that to Casey's favorite featherweight, so it's fine.
That's
No
true.
issues.
Way worse.
No, don't. Okay, first of all, don't say that. Don't say he's my favorite featherweight. Stop saying that. I
You
did not ever
drafted
say
him.
that. That I drafted. I don't draft him. Ryan Hall is my favorite featherweight. We all know that. Ryan Hall.
Okay,
God,
you know what? Fair point.
I've said that.
By the
Fair.
way, I just looked this up
God,
courtesy
what's
of
happening?
MMAfighting.com. Terrific
Great
website, by the way.
Great website.
Disclosed payouts for UFC 249, which was back all these years ago when Florida would actually release the fighter salaries. And I know all of this is not, completely accurate, but usually outside of like title fights and bigger names, some of those are off. Jeremy Stephens made the second lowest amount of any fighter the third lowest amount of any fighter on the fight card. Jorgen De Castro made his debut on that card. He made $12,000. Charles Rosa made $24,000. Coming in at third lowest on the card was Jeremy Stephens at $46,900 to get knocked out by Calvin Kattar. We also have to take into effect he had to forfeit some of his purse to Kattar for missing weight in that fight as well. So
Cheater.
Is Mason Jones, is he lightweight? Is this featherweight or lightweight? The Mason Jones fight.
this is a lightweight fight.
Okay, so he's going up. He's going back up. He's not going to 45 anymore. Okay.
Nope.
Cool.
Yes, Michelle Watterson made $60,000 compared to Jeremy Stephens making $46,900 that night.
Oh, well, that might explain why he has so many fights. Yeah, then.
And Greg Hardy made $180,000 to fight at UFC 249. Just throwing that out there as well. Fucking crazy.
Dana White, yeah. Such a good scout. All right, thank you very much, Terrence. What else we got here? Super chat from Slito.
Did you see War Machine ep of Dark Side of the Cage? My favorite part was the end where they put up Jones McGregor pictures saying that they too were domestic abusers. I watched
Just Jones and McGregor? Jeez.
Well,
I mean, there was plenty of other humans to put up there.
I watched almost the whole thing. War Machine is he is just a true, real piece of shit, that guy. Just truly.
One of the bigger ones that's ever been involved in the sport.
Yeah. Like just a giant piece of shit. And if you haven't seen the episode, you will feel... Yeah. It's interesting, like, because you forget some of the details about like how he became who he became. And then you hear from guys like Matt Serra and you hear from others. It was basically like saying like him meeting Phil Baroni was sort of the downfall of his career.
Also
Phil
a
Baroni
huge
helped
piece of
him.
shit.
Yeah, maybe the biggest, as Matt Serra says in the episode, horrible dude. I think it's pretty obvious, and that's not the dude you want to follow. He did get some quick fame because of his time on The Ultimate Fighter and sort of being raw and emotional and real on that show. And then everything that happened after that, they actually interviewed War Machine while he's in prison for this episode. So you get to hear him speak, and he's just as big of a piece of shit now as he was back then. So I'll leave it at that.
They interview him in prison?
Check it out.
This episode?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yep.
No, I haven't seen it yet. I really want to see it. This truly is a dark side of the sport. So
yes,
this truly is.
I made the choice. I'm just not keeping up with it. I think that it's the ones I've seen. They're obviously well made and tell important stories. I live in this shit. I already know all the bad shit. Like I just don't. Dark Side is one of those things that I would recommend to my friends who don't really know anything. Like, what's the worst thing that happened in MMA? It's like those. I get those. So we have those kind of conversations fairly regularly. I'm like, let me tell you about a guy named Ramazan Kadyrov. And so like, I think they do important stuff, and that's sort of the content I would recommend. But I don't personally. I just don't need that, and I just have enough of it already, so I don't need that. I will say.
the Pride ones are freaking awesome.
War Machine probably just came along too early because like that was back when we as a society gave a shit about things. because War Machine is just the Tate brothers, but he came along a little too early. If War Machine was on the rise right now, he would probably be doing much better for himself instead of rotting in the jail cell he deserves.
I hate that you said that, but yeah.
But it's correct.
I was thinking that about it. I didn't want to put that out there.
So we are clear. War Machine is a huge piece of shit. Dana White also shook hands with the goddamn Tate brothers last week at a UFC-sponsored event. Fuck them all.
Not only shook hands, had a camera crew to make sure it was covered properly with even a nice boom mic to get all the crisp audio. So yeah,
it's terrible.
Oh, it was,
but
I don't know.
The Dark Side of the Cage people do good work.
They do good people too. They're fun. Yeah. They're nice.
And Dark Side of the Ring. If you were ever a pro wrestling fan, highly recommend you watch those. Jesus,
that's the thing. I've seen a couple of those and I learned things like that. To me, that's where Dark Side of the Cage like makes sense. I don't like. I know the Ian Freeman story. Like I know all these stories pretty well because I've been in the space for 20 some odd years. Whereas
we're a bunch of
pro wrestling stuff, I'm much more interested to learn. Like, I didn't know. Like when what was the movie 2 years ago about the wrestling family that I don't know their names?
The Von Erichs.
Yeah, whatever that movie was
I was thinking Fighting of the Family. I thought that one.
I went and watched the Dark Side.
I was on that one.
After I watched that movie, because it was really fascinating, I went and watched like the Dark Side and just like learned about this shit.
And you realized the real story was actually more sad than the movie.
It was way worse. It was
the
way
real
worse.
Story.
Oh yeah.
They actually had to make the movie. They had to make the movie happier because you had just been too depressed.
I was so surprised. I was like, this movie is a bummer, and somehow it's the rainbow colored glasses of this story. It is nuts. But like to me, that's really where Dark Side shines, is to be like, hey, people who don't have any exposure can learn the dark side of the sport, and MMA is a sport with a lot of dark corners in it.
Yeah.
They will not run out of
really
content.
Good topics too. Yeah. They're doing one on Ludwig Borga. He was in WWF in like the 90s. They brought him in as like one of the foreign dudes that's just gonna like fight all the Americans, and he was there for a year, and then he was gone. And I have no idea what his story is. We just like joke about him as just like a fun wrestling name, but apparently he's got involved in some really fucked up shit. So curious to see that. Yeah, the Dark Sides, they do a great job.
All right.
Tim Healy, by the way, the executive producer, when I asked him, we spoke right before the Kimbo episode dropped, and I was like, is there one topic that you fought for that didn't come through? Or do you think, or if this gets renewed for season 2, that you are going to make sure that this happens? And he said the story of Vanderlei Silva will be part of season 2.
Nice.
Which I love.
It's a good story.
It's a damn good story.
Interesting. I'm not sure I'd call it good in that traditional sense, but deeply fascinating.
Yeah, 100%.
Dude, so many guys out there have amazing pride. I've heard some amazing pride stories about just the things that it was wild. It was a wild time.
The Pride Dark Sides are good.
I haven't seen that one. I haven't seen that one yet.
Yeah, you gotta check it out. It's 2 part. It's 2 episodes. One is the rise and one is the fall, and it's awesome. Pretty awesome.
So cool. That's so cool. Yay! Awesome. Got some Andrew Tate defenders in the comment section.
I know it's the best.
I don't want to go there. I'm not even going to go there today. Thank you, Salita. All right. What we got here?
Lazy Bad. UFC 26 was Iowa. 27 was New Orleans. Foreshadowing? Perhaps.
I mean, not really. Just in the fact that like we know they're going to New Orleans this year. It is not, the timeline is not there or whatever. But I mean, Dustin has basically said this is happening this year at some point in time, and it will be my final fight. So, but that is fun. Also clever. A lot of cleverness from the chatters today.
Yes, for the most part.
And UFC 28 was in Atlantic
City. No,
Ooh,
wasn't it Tachi?
Atlantic City.
That would have been incredible if 28 was Tachi.
I know. I was hoping. I was like, All right. Thank you, Lazy Bed. And one last super chat from Terrence again. $9.99 super chat. Thank you so much.
My man. If this all boxing female card is good, will UFC follow? If you had to make a dream main card, who would it be?
Ooh, UFC all women's main card.
So they were
With
we
the
talked
modern-
about this before. They wanted that there was plans a couple of years ago. I think the last time they went to San Antonio, they were going to make it an all women's card. It didn't happen, but there were plans to do that. And I don't remember what the main event was going to be. I want to say that was the Macy Barber Andrea Lee fight card. I don't think that was going to be the main event, but I know that was like one of the fights that was supposed to be on that card. And just for some reason or another, it just didn't come together. So, but now MVP, run by Jake Paul and Nikisa Badarian, they are doing an all-female boxing card at Madison Square Garden in July, headlined by the trilogy fight between Katie Taylor and Amanda Serrano, which is just going to be fun as hell.
Sick.
Netflix, and that card will obviously come together. But if we did a all-female UFC main card, who would it be?
You know what sucks about that? It's like UFC just kind of missed the boat on that one. I felt like 5-6 years ago, it was the timing was better for that. But
Yeah.
now it's just the women's divisions just aren't as strong as they were 5-6 years ago. But are we doing a main card right now with the modern roster?
Yeah,
Today's
make a
roster,
dream
okay.
main card. Who would it be?
Yeah.
Man,
Okay,
the
main.
Tristan Tate defenders in the chat are just gonna hate this one. Not watching this garbage sport. Durr.
I mean, John Whaley and Valentina Shevchenko is one of them, right?
I
We're doing
mean,
pay-per-view-
that
sorry, I guess
depends. Shevchenko has a title defense, and she may not win. So, like,
Well, I mean, if
I would
but
stipulate Zhang versus the winner of the upcoming title fight.
yeah, but this is
but
a
like-
dream main card. I don't think no disrespect to Manaffioro. I don't think anyone's dreaming of Manaffioro fighting John Whaley. I think people would more prefer Zhang and Valentina,
So main event,
right?
main event, Pena Harrison.
Pena Harrison and then Zhang Shevchenko
Valentina
as the
is the co-main event.
feels
Okay.
like those
Yeah.
are the two things that
That's
you
the top
build.
two, easy.
You build the card around. Be the best pay-per-view that's happened this year. If they did that.
That's actually a very nice pay per view already at the top.
Already, it's certainly better than 312.
So then what do you?
Natty Ice versus Rose Namajunas would be the
Sure.
featured bout.
Gotta get Jandiroba on there. Jandiroba versus Suarez.
Dern 2.
Dern or Dern.
Yeah, we just throw the on fight on there.
Jandiroba Dern 2.
Janjana.
I think Jandiroba
Sure.
Dern 2 is that's the one that I would
Yeah, I like that.
prefer.
That first fight is pretty fun.
Yeah, Jandiroba Dern too.
And then it's the UFC. They'd probably put Macy Barber in a spot to get on a main card again.
Against Jazz and
Like,
Jazz
if they're trying to make
Or-
this
Seems
like
like it'll be
big.
fun.
Or Blanchard.
Yeah,
She's
yeah.
not. Yeah, she's a good fighter. I don't think
I like it.
she'd be a
but-
good prelim fighter. I
Barbara
think.
Blanchfield
Oh,
would
wow,
be fine
wow.
main card.
No, it's not because she's not
I
good
got
at
you.
fighting. We're trying to sell pay-per-views here, and I'm sorry, Aaron Blanchfield ain't selling a single pay-per-view.
No. Macy Barber, and then the UFC signs Dakota Ditchneva.
Oh, now we're
That would be
talking.
good.
There
Now
you go.
we're talking.
That's a really good five.
Maybe they don't
fight
sign. Maybe
pay-per-view.
they trade Magomed
Trade.
Ankalaev for Dakota Ditchneva because they don't want his ass.
Dude, would they do that?
I honestly think.
Whoa.
I think I said it on our post show.
They would
where I
trade a
was like,
champion.
They should just trade Ankalaev. They clearly don't want his ass, and like they could
They
just
would
take
do
all
that
of
in
the
a
fighters from PFL.
In PFL, they seem to do better with Russian. Is he Russian? Is Ankalaev Russian?
Yes, he's Russian.
Yeah. I was double checking. They do well with Russian fighters, so maybe Russian fighters really aren't pay-per-view draws, but they obviously get lots of clicks around the world.
If Don Davis called the UFC brass and offered that trade right now, they would accept it before.
I mean,
They'd
the
be
thing
like,
is,
"Hold
the
on."
UFC,
They'd be like, "We'll call you
UFC
back."
should get
Before the
more.
phone
They
hangs
should-
up, they made
They
the
should be like,
decision to say yes.
we want Pico and Edlund and Ditcheva. And Don Davis should still be like, sure, I accept your trade offer.
That's yeah.
Also,
But the
somebody in
UFC
the
would take
chat
that in a second.
pointed this out. I actually think the UFC should do this if Kayla beats Juliana Pena and they do get Nunes to come back. I think that Kayla Nunes should be the main event of a legitimate. They should actually try and do this because it would be a cool thing to do for the sport.
Yep.
To be like, all right, now we'll do Zhang Shevchenko in the co-main event to Nunes Kayla, and we'll just blow this out, and people will hate. Some people will hate it, but it will be legitimately pretty cool thing to do. So
yeah.
But also if they do, and maybe here's how you pitch it to them too. If you do one all-female card, you just basically don't have to put women's bouts on like the next 12 cards because you only have about 20 women who are worth a damn anymore because you have let
So you'd have to do like
all die.
Yeah, you'd have to do like 4 women's bantamweight fights because that'll definitely hit your target number for a 6-month span in one night.
You'll have knocked out all the bantamweight fights for a year if you do 4 on one card. They do like 12 bantamweight fights a year. It's insanely low volume.
Great.
There's just no one there.
How many was it last year? Because I remember 2 years ago I was like looking this up for something, and it was legitimately like 19 bantamweight fights if you were counting fights where fighters missed weight and were like featherweight bouts as well. So,
and then Julia Avila retired, so there's one women's bantamweight that's off the books. That's like 8% of their entire bantamweight roster right there. It's just gone.
And even like,
thank you, Terrence.
Even like in other organizations, even locally in gyms, like I just don't see any female 135ers even out there. That's the crazy part. It's not like the UFC aren't signing. They're just not out there. They're not in the. They're just not in the gyms. They're just. Yeah, it's not like I don't.
Would you care to guess how many women's bantamweight fights there were last year?
22.
Really close. 21. 21 for an entire
I was
weight
being
class.
generous too. Wow, I thought I'd be off by like
I
3
was
or
thinking
4.
below 20. Yeah.
Yeah. That is still just not a lot. Not a lot.
Right.
In comparison, men's flyweight, a weight class that is dedicatedly undeserved, like they tried to kill it, 43.
And we thank them for that. Just none of those fights are bad.
They're not.
Thank you, Terrence. All right, see what other super chats we got. I got a couple more coming in from our friend Chase. Oh, this is a classic, but yeah.
How do you think Big Ant match up against Prime DC and Jones?
Be competitive. I don't know if he'd win. I wouldn't pick him to beat Jones.
I don't think him to be Prime DC either, but he'd be competitive with.
Probably wouldn't pick him to be Prime DC. I think he'd be competitive with both. He's a really well-rounded skill set. Like,
he ain't getting the doors blown off him by either guy.
I think DC would have a hard time wrestling him. Could succeed, but would have a hard time. And then DC would also just had physical disadvantages being as small as he was a light heavyweight. I think that could be a very tough fight for him. Still probably favor DC, but could be tough. Jones is John Jones. Like, Prime John Jones is, like, at worst the third best fighter I've ever seen on earth. So I would obviously pick Prime John Jones to beat him. But I also watched Prime John Jones like win fairly tepid decisions for a lot of his career because he just did not want to expose himself to any danger whatsoever. Like, I think that fight would probably end up being pretty boring.
How would you pick? How about Ank over, let's call it, Thiago Santos, Dominic Reyes era John Jones?
I mean, I still just default to John winning, but that's really like it's just going to be a coin flip.
Yeah. I mean, I had John leaving in my own scorecards, leaving the UFC on a 2-fight losing streak.
So did I.
Leaving the
division. I thought he lost both of those fights, but
I would definitely pick Ank, but but it's fun to talk about. But Prime John Jones, No, Prime John Jones is Prime John Jones. I mean, that's why that's
I
who
still
he
think
is.
Ankalaev. I think Big Ank would have been a tougher fight for him in his prime still because he won't just get free takedowns. And Ankalaev's like decent in the clinch, not amazing, but he's decent enough to not get like his throttled in the way that
Yeah.
John throttled most people in the clinch. But John just had so many physical advantages over every 205 that ever walked the earth that I cannot pick against him.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Chase. One more super chat.
It's a good one.
Tucker Carlson and Kid Rock won't be in crowd for that one.
I think that's probably correct.
Yeah, certainly.
All right. Let me see. What else we got here?
This week, Waldo Cortez Acosta versus Ryan Spann is booked. Is that an under the radar fight on a card people don't care about? Waldo is 12-1, quickly amassing a good run at heavyweight. Ryan Spann is debuting at heavyweight.
Sir, no. What is that, Joseph? I do not accept your terms here. No. This is just, what are we talking about? Like, WCA is honestly like a respectable heavyweight, but come on, man. Like, this circling back to the Seinfeld comment. He's like winning or whatever, but I don't care to ever watch him fist fight somebody. And Ryan Spann is Ryan Spann making his heavyweight debut. No, not at all. The interest in this fight is purely like morbid curiosity about how bad these two weight classes can be.
I mean, there is no such thing as an under the radar fight on this card. It just isn't. It's just all bad. It's
This
just
is the
all
worst card I've
bad.
ever seen put together on paper. Maybe it'll be fun, right? Like, I know that Dana gets a lot of mileage out of that particular line of thought of like, well, it's the cards you don't think about that are the best. We could have fun on Saturday.
Yeah, this
But
is a
it-
contender. This is a
entirely
contender
meaningless
series
fun.
card. It's a contender
Like-
series card
Yeah.
with a main event with two recognizable names.
Dude,
I
I
still-
didn't
Waldo
even do
Cortez
like
Acosta,
an actual
number
breakdown
12.
on it. Off the top of my head, there are like 9 contender series fighters on this card, and there probably more. That's just off the top of my head that I can be like, yeah, that was a contender series prospect. Plus, you got some road to UFC folk. You got a couple, one or two tough dudes on here. Like, this is meaningless. This card is meaningless. So none of it's on the radar. This is no.
I think the only fight that I have like any true curiosity for is the Hernandez Holloway fight. That's like the only one that I'm like somewhat curious about. And truth be told, somehow, some way, I don't know what I ate to make me so lucky. I got the night off on Saturday, so I don't have to work this card. So I probably will not be watching live. Yeah, I probably not be watching live. The only fight I might tune in for live is the Hernandez Holloway fight because the Alexander Hernandez, not even an experiment, just his run is so wild and weird, and he's going to be an interesting like documentary piece someday about finding rapid success in the world's biggest fighting organization and then really learning nothing because he didn't get to grow in the promotion. He just beats Beneil Dariush and then is a top 15 fighter in the best division in the sport after just 35 seconds of being in the UFC. And then he talked a bunch of shit about Donald Cerrone at a press conference, got kicked in the face, and that kind of killed him. Yeah.
Didn't go well. This card this weekend has like a number of prospects I'm pretty excited to watch. But like again, this is terrible. There's nothing good about this card.
Carly Judy's fighting. I'll probably watch that.
Carly Judy's the prospect I really
wicked
like.
fun.
Andre
Yeah,
Lima's
she's
prospect I
real
really
fun.
like. Josias Musasa, prospect I really like. Kevin Vallejos, Calvin Vallejos is a prospect everyone should absolutely be in love with because he is the God's honest truth. That kid's going to be incredible. Vallejos was on Contender Series 2 years ago and lost like one of the better fights of the year to Jean Silva. We've all seen what Jean Silva's done in the UFC, and Kevin Vallejos, who's 22 years old, gave him a lot more trouble than basically anybody else John Silva's fought. That dude's going to be sick. But, like, that's what this card is. Like, you want to watch some of the stars of tomorrow, they're on this card. But this shit could be going down in, like, a Wild Bills near you and would be functionally the same.
Yeah. You want to talk about nicknames? This isn't Ultimate Field of Dreams. This is UFC Apex 104 enhancement talent. That's what this card is.
Yep. And, of course, the Waldo Cortez Acosta Ryan Spann barn burner we've all been waiting for.
Oh, yes. No, we haven't because it's flown so far under the radar that we forgot all about it.
He's quickly amassing a good run at heavyweight. I'm just saying. It says it right
He's
there.
5-1, which is really speaks to what heavyweight is.
He is knocking on the door of headlining a card
with Derek Lewis.
Against Derek Lewis in some
Derek
godforsaken farm city in the United States. Des Moines would have been a perfect place
in
for
upstate
Derek
New
Lewis
York,
versus
somewhere in upstate New York.
In Poughkeepsie, UFC Poughkeepsie, Derek Lewis versus Waldo Cortez Acosta, ladies and gentlemen.
I do love WCA because he is the patron saint of heavyweight overs, so at least we got that going for us. But man, it's actually a really fun dynamic. Waldo Cortez Acosta basically can only fight 15 minutes, and Ryan Spann can only be done fighting in 5 minutes. So a stoppable force meeting a movable object. Who will win here? I do not know.
Can you imagine if this is a 7 p.m. prelim, 10 p.m. Eastern main card? Oh my God.
When is it? Is it 4?
It's 4-7. It's a 4-7.
It's the early Apex, luckily.
Thank God I don't have to buy energy drinks this week. But maybe it'll be fun, guys. A lot of prospects I'm interested in.
Fist fighting.
There's going to be a bunch of finishes and mismatched matchups. And that's okay. If you want like a quick night at the office with a bunch of finishes, you're probably going to get it.
And that's what these cards should be, honestly.
Yeah.
They should be just exciting highlight reels, no real significant meaning to the rankings. But
like there is an actual conversation that AK and I are going to have on whether or not we're doing it on to the next one on Sunday. Like truly. Because it's dart throws on every single one of these fights. Every single one.
Every middleweight.
Yes, who the fuck is he?
He hasn't fought the other Roman.
Random welterweight.
Oh, that's true. That's true. Maybe
the Roman he thought he was fighting this time around.
That fight's happening no matter what.
Piece of trivia. I'm going to remember that. That's a piece of trivia that's going to stick in my head for like 30 years. I will be old and having Alzheimer's and like losing my thing. I'll be like, you guys won't remember this. There's a guy named Marvin Vettori who was like a consensus top 10 middleweight for nearly a decade. And he once came out and admitted that he was rematching a dude because he thought he was fighting another dude with the same name. And like, what the hell are you talking about? What's the UFC, Grandpa? You senile old man. Like, you guys don't know. You don't know what the dark years of the Apex were like.
And then with the article, you showed the photo of him wearing his Venom outfit backwards.
Yeah, I thought I was fighting the other Roman. I didn't realize I was rematching the dude I fought last year. You are. Okay, I guess.
Our great fans who watch on television, they all tell us they don't understand. They don't recognize the difference between a fight night on the road, a pay-per-view card in front of 20,000 people, or a fight night card in the mighty Apex. It all sounds and feels the same to all of our fans.
Dude,
never forget.
I hate that so much. I don't like when you like lie to me in general. I really don't like when it's the most brazen lie of all time. They don't even notice. Okay, man, sure.
Yeah, no. Don't go on Twitter the night of Apex cards.
But the UFC did expertly pair up Priscilla Cachoeira and Josiane Nunez. So, Priscilla, just keeping that job, baby. Let's go.
I know MMA is very young, but can you put into perspective its popularity? Outside U.S., it might be harder to tell, and it's still relatively unknown in very niche places, but thoughts on its growth today? How
It's
do
kind of
you
an
compare
interesting
this?
question.
I've been saying for a while the UFC is as big as it's ever been, but MMA is smaller.
Oh, 100%.
I know it doesn't feel like it makes sense by saying that, but yeah, that's why the brand is as strong as it's ever been, but the sport itself is, I don't know, it's just
Yeah.
smaller.
It
I
just,
don't
I
know.
mean, there's pockets of the globe where it has grown immensely. Like KSW is fucking gigantic in that part of the world. And, you know, in most people's eyes, like KSW's in that part of the world, Poland and a lot of parts of Europe, they're bigger than the UFC in that part of the
Oh
world.
yeah,
So it is interesting when you look at it at that aspect. But just kind of looking at it from our points of view in the US, and we look at the growth and emergence of other sports that have been in kind of similar spots. I always compare to where the UFC is now to where it was like right before WWF did the thing with MTV, before they really blew up and Hulk Hogan got over and became massive. Like that's kind of like they were bigger and they started getting more worldwide and global. The territory wrestling business was no more. And that's kind of where I think this is right now. Like very popular. Everyone knows who they are. Not everyone's going to tune in right now, but tremendous growth came very quickly. And now we see with WWE, WWE had peaks and valleys, no doubt about it. But now, 40 years later, they are bigger than they've ever been after all of that. So I would say that, but even then, I don't really know. Is it like, what is it? Is it poker? Like televised poker?
Poker might not be a bad call. Poker's honestly, that feels decent, right? I'm trying to like just sort of quick pull something based on a very cursory search of the internet, and this is by no means definitive. But like just looking at the UFC's revenue in 2024, a little over $1 billion, like 1.3 or something like that. Um, it's like a top 20 sports league. The UFC is globally. Um, which feels about right, right? Like
Yeah.
it's the UFC has a broader, at least it has reached a level of identification in the world, broadly speaking. But I think to Casey's point, MMA outside of the UFC almost does not exist anymore, and so really the UFC is almost synonymous with MMA in a lot of respects at this point in time. And so like it's a top 20-ish sports league in the world. That's good. That's incredibly successful business, but like it's not any other major sport that There's just none of those exist.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's hard one answer, but yeah, unique. Um, I'm always blown away by. Like I always think MMA's UFC so big, but then I look at the world of gaming. That is insanely big. Like I'm just like
Right, it's
Yes.
humongous.
I'm always like, or esports, whatever you call that. Man, I don't know. I just talking about just growth of sports. That one always kind of just shocks me. How big gaming is, but yes.
Someone,
Thank you.
I got into a discussion with somebody on Instagram not that long ago. I had to eventually pull whatever hair was left in my head out, but he goes, he was arguing that the UFC was bigger than golf. And I was like,
Nope.
"Are you
That's
fucking ridiculous?
not
That
far
is
wrong.
that is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard in my life." I just
I'm
want
not entirely sure the UFC is bigger than the MLS. I think it is, but
I,
I don't think it's by that much.
I don't think
yeah,
so.
maybe like social media metrics, perhaps, but not like not viewership wise. Like, it's not even close.
Well, yeah.
It's not even close. Golf, like a bunch of YouTubers golfed at the Players at the
Yeah,
TBC
TBC
Sawgrass
Sawgrass,
yesterday.
baby.
That's more people watched that than are going to watched any of the UFC pay-per-views this year by a lot. That's just the growth of golf. They're on fire right now. Just absolutely on fire. And UFC is too. From a business perspective, the UFC is murdering it. Like they are just crushing it. And they've won. They've legitimately won MMA in 2025.
Oh yeah, game's over. Yeah.
Yeah,
That game's
wait till
over.
they sign this new deal. It may not get $1 billion a year, but they're going to get pretty damn close. They're going to get like $950 million a year, which is nothing to sneeze at. Like you've won. The game's over. No one's catching them. No one is catching them.
Honestly, I think poker might be a really good call. Whereas there was a big poker boom, people really took to poker. Poker still exists. It's fairly pervasive. People maybe watch one or two things on ESPN a year, the World Series or whatever, but sort of just fell out to rescinded. I think there's a lot of similarities there. So
Yeah.
and we are in undeniably a down period of the UFC. It is receding right now. It will very likely go back up, but it's going to be a cyclical sort of thing because the history of the sport has been cyclical. It has not been a consistent rate of growth. The broader trajectory is there, but it's got peaks and valleys on this broad upward climb. So poker's a pretty good call. I think that might be closest.
Yeah, the boom of the UFC audience is upon us. Like we're in the middle of it right now. But as most people know who have been fans of the sport, it's like an NFL career being a UFC fan. If you're in, you're in. Not everyone can be Tom Brady and Peyton Manning and play for 20 years. Like if you're in, you are in. But most people who become fans of the sport and start watching shit and having people over to watch, they're fans for like 2 or 3 years and then they're like, okay, I'm done. It's too much to keep up with. And they watch from a casual perspective.
Yeah, there's too much to keep up with. We have a fairly good amount of data that like the average MMA fandom is like 3 to 5 year cycles. And that's I haven't actually seen anything about this. That probably changes as with the lack thereof stars, right? Like Conor McGregor fans are more likely to stick with the sport because Conor McGregor was involved in it. Without like key touch points like that, it's really hard to be fans of an organization. Like to be, the UFC, the quality you are getting, that you have a baseline of something with the 3 letters branded of UFC, but you're not a fan of promotions other than like the most ignorant mouth breathers in the world. And some of those exist, whatever. But like, also there is a very real cap to how many people will ever care about this sport. Organized violence is simply not for most people. And that is at a very baseline level what this is. For as much as Dana used to say, you go to a hockey game and there's a football game and a fight breaks out, everybody goes to the fight. That's just not like most people do not want to watch organized violence, like real violence. They might watch, violent movies or whatever, but most people do not want to watch fist fights with any sort of regularity. And so that puts a cap on it. And let me tell you guys, MMA is pretty close to peak. Like the UFC is not going to get much bigger. It can still continue to grow and it can get wider in the global population. But here's how MMA is not going to get much bigger because Dana doesn't give a shit about it anymore. Dana would not be dumping as much energy into Power Slap as he is or into his boxing league or surfing. Like there's only so many hours in the day you can do stuff, but MMA is pretty much at max saturation right now. Maybe not. There's still a little bit of room to go, but it's harder to get the next couple of percentage points up for where the UFC is versus starting a whole new thing and trying to grow it from the ground. Like MMA is never going to be, UFC is never going to be the 4th major sports league in the US. Like it's just not going to be that.
No.
So it's not going to be bigger than soccer? Or is that what you're telling me?
It's never going to be bigger than soccer, football, hockey, tennis, golf, baseball,
basketball.
Basketball. Obviously, basketball is the number 2. I don't really know the global
lacrosse.
metrics. It'll stay bigger than lacrosse. I've been hearing that
pickleball's coming. Pickleball's coming.
Pickleball's not coming either.
Right there.
No, those are all lies. Those are all fads.
Catching strays.
No, lacrosse.
Pickleball's coming.
As a collegiate rugby player, all I heard was that rugby and lacrosse are the next big sports, and that's been true for 20 years, and they still ain't there because they're never gonna catch on. There's too much market here. The UFC, like at best, can be like the 8th biggest sport in America, and that's I don't even think that's realistic. Like auto racing, if you count all auto racing, they're never going to catch auto racing. They're never going to be in the fucking ballpark of auto racing if you pile F1 and NASCAR and like the truck series and all that together. So, they're sort of where they're at, which is unbelievable. As a fan from the early 2000s, for the sport to be here is outrageous compared to like when I would literally be like, you couldn't illegally stream shit because nobody had a stream up. Nobody was streaming Pride Bushido 28 or whatever. Like that wasn't a thing. You had to either like have a black box pay-per-view to buy it, or you had to wait and go watch this shit in Blockbuster because the sport did not exist but in forums. So it's unbelievable how it has come in the past 25 years, but it ain't going much further.
Ultimate Field of Dreams.
That's where it all started.
The good old days.
Like that card was. I didn't even know that. I didn't know that UFC 26. You couldn't even get a VHS of it.
No clue. I just assumed you could get a VHS for all of them, but I had no idea.
Yeah. Thank you, Masters of the Universe.
As LazyBed correctly points out, if you combine all these numbers together, Power Slap doubles it.
All right, one last super chat before we get out of here.
All right. Speaking of Reyes, with the win in April, how many fights away is he from fighting for the belt again? Would be a cool moment if he can get back into it. He is fighting Nikita Krylov
at 314. He is fighting Nikita Krylov at 314.
Let me tell you something. If we had first quarter,
incredible.
If we had a fighter of the year on BTL for the last 5 months, it's Dominic Reyes. More people are invested in the success and the rise to a second title or third title fight of Dominic Reyes than maybe any other fighter in the UFC based on the questions you guys ask. And I'm here to say I love that. I love to see it. Dominic Reyes was a guy who, a year and a half ago, every time that man was booked for a fight, we were like, God, no. God, no. Don't do this. Oh, he's fighting Dustin Jacoby. Why? Who is his manager? Who are his coaches? Why are they allowing this man to fight? And now look at him. 2 big wins, 2 finishes, and now we're talking how close is Dominic Reyes to a title fight? And in the world where Magomed Ankalaev has fought almost everybody, there is one man he has not fought yet. Could it be, Jed? Could it be? Is Dominic Reyes the wild card here at 205 during this reign of Magomed Ankalaev? Could we see him fight for a title this time next year?
It would be the best thing that's happened in this sport in years, right? Like the best thing that's happened in MMA remotely recently is Robbie Lawler's retirement. Like we finally got a good thing to happen. This would be like the next thing. Left for dead. I say it all the time in reference like other fighters. You lose 4 in a row, your career's over. Nobody comes back. Like Andrei Arlovsky's like the only fighter who's ever lost 4 in a row and then turned it around to be relevant again. Dominic Reyes is on the cusp of doing that, right? Like he comes in here, beats Nikita Krylov. Krylov is number 8 in the UFC rankings. So Reyes will out of nowhere somehow be the number 8 light heavyweight in the world. A lot of the dudes above him, like God bless Jan Blachowicz. He can't fight for much longer. He's 42 or some shit. Like, there's just not that much left that Yanni's got bringing with him to the table. And, Alex Pereira, probably not a long tenured career left. I mean, not trying to early retire him, but he is also a little bit older. You could find a world where he beats Krylov and he's 1 away from a title fight. And that 1 might be like Jamal Hill, which is a winnable fight. I love Yuri Prochazka more than almost anyone on this planet. Yuri can lose to anybody because he's a psychopath. He doesn't. He beats everybody that's not named Alex, but he could lose to anybody because he's a crazy person. So, like, a win at 314 will be an incredible feel-good story and literally put Reyes 1 away from having, like, an unparalleled career renaissance. Like, the only fighters who like are remotely close if he ends up fighting for a belt by next year. And it's not the same, but like Glover getting the belt so late in his career was like a feel-good story of like, oh, Glover, we thought he could do it, and he fought John that one time and then just sort of was around and never did it. That was great. RDA, his career turnaround, Charles Oliveira, like going from good fun fighter to champion. But like they never lost 4 in a row and were like, this dude just needs to leave the sport. It would be almost unparalleled and incredible. I desperately hope it happens. It'd be so cool.
I think Reyes with 1 win. I think if he knocks out Krylov, like he could get a title shot. Roundtree got 1 on less. Roundtree and Reyes is a story coming into it.
Maybe. I think the
Roundtree
way
got
the
a title
ball's
shot
breaking,
on much less.
Yeah, but I think the way the ball is breaking right now in the division, that's tough because you have Carlos Ulberg fighting Jan Blachowicz. Ulberg, I think, is going to win that fight. At that point,
it's always availability, though. You never know.
That's what I'm saying. Like, I'm not saying it's 0, but it's a really low percentage that he beats Krylov and gets one. It's not 0, but it's like 2% because there's the Alex rematch that seems like it's going to happen. Carlos Ulberg is sort of waiting in the wings. Jamal Hill and Khalil are fighting.
Weren't we all saying
Yuri
Alex
is still there?
is fighting too much? He needs to take some time off. Maybe you don't think he sits out.
We are saying that, but nobody in his camp is saying that. They're all saying they want the immediate rematch. So I assume that the immediate rematch is coming. Yuri is waiting. Carlos Ulberg will be waiting. The winner of Hill Roundtree. There are just too many names in front of him in the list. It's not 0. It's really low. So I think he will just have to win 1 more. But if he beats Krylov and can win 1 more, if he beats Krylov and wins 1 more, he is fighting for a belt. It won't matter. He doesn't need 2 more wins to fight or 3 more wins to fight for a belt. He just needs 2, and that in itself would be a damn near miracle.
Yeah, he might fight Carlos Ulberg. Who knows? Depending on how
cool
this Pereira Ankalaev thing goes, because I don't expect Ankalaev to fight until like October. And is Carlos Ulberg,
whenever they go to Dubai,
wait a year to fight again? Sure. Yeah, they'll go to Abu Dhabi in October like they always do. That's probably when Ankalaev will fight again. Unless the UFC wants it sooner, and then, again, that phone rings. Could be him. I mean, the brutality of those knockout losses were just... It just got worse and worse and worse. Jan Blachowicz clobbers him. Yuri Prochazka
beating John Jones and just got dead a bunch.
I thought Yuri Prochazka ended his life. Honestly,
and he was beating Yuri too.
Like
he was gonna beat Yuri until the spinning back elbow of doom.
And then we're like, all right, he's fighting Ryan Spann. Like,
competitive. Don't talk about Yuri.
We're gonna know all. Yeah, then he fights Ryan Spann and MSG.
You know I love Yuri.
I love him more. All right.
Yuri is my large adult son. The only thing I need in life is to see Yuri fight DDP. It's the only fight. It and Eddie Hall versus Puds are the. Give me those 2 and I'll die a happy man.
All right, I think we're good, right?
We are good.
All right, we're done. Hit the music. Appreciate you. Hey, back next week. We'll react to UFC Vegas 104 for the first 4.5 minutes of the program. And then we'll get you ready for UFC London and everything else that's going on. Dirty boxing next week as well. So there's a lot going on next weekend. So get excited. We'll discuss it right here on the program. For Casey, for Jed, I am Mike Heck. Have a great rest of your week. Back next week here on BTL. The iconic voice of Estelin takes you home. Good night, everyone.
Love y'all. Even those of you just mouth breathing hard in the chat. Love all of you.
This has been Between the Links,
Goons.
an MMA fighting production on the Vox Media Network.